So this video started as a response to the people who say that these AGI doomer people have no specifics. So the plan was to connect the dots between a few specific examples of what's happening now, like ChatGPT, Bard, AutoGPT, and then think about how could we get to a point where there's actually like an existential crisis. That artificial superintelligent extinction events that Jan LeCun and Max Tegmark are all talking about. And to do it all with a Bayesian mindset, like thinking probabilistically, but also taking into account prior steps. Like, does one reasonable step lead to another reasonable step? You have to ask that on each step. And surprising to me, like as I did that, obviously it gets very convoluted by the time you get to like these far off extinction scenarios, but the intermediate part, the maybe 5 to 10 years, like assuming ASI really does show up on the scene, like I got a lot of thoughts now, like some clarity around how I think that those problematic areas might sort of play out. So it was a really thoughtful afternoon putting this script together, and I'm excited to share it with you. Like if I had to name this era in my head, I would call it like a welcomed extortion period, where we're like, thank you for doing these things, here's more control, thank you, can you do this if I give you more control? And it just slowly, just voluntarily takes over. So that is actually what this video is gonna be about, that intermediate period. So for a bunch of reasons that we're going to talk about later in the video, I envision a near-term future where AGI and eventually ASI is just like its own society all over the world, running on all sorts of different servers, on local machines, and there's this whole interplay between all of the ways that they're tuned and the interplay between humans and them. So we end up with like a marketplace of competing goals, and mostly non-humans. But my guess is that when you average across them all, if they're out there doing the kinds of things that like normal capitalism would have them trying to do, I think that turns into this way where they try to provide value by understanding our data, making predictions, doing things for us, but also walling off that data and all those features to us behind paywalls. Like akin to the same way that all of our social media is on Facebook and most people don't download it, but also now it's like your driving habits and your refrigerator and your cooking and all of the little things that right now are more analog, and then simultaneously at the same time diverting our attention by all sorts of new ways to entertain and reward us. And that idea of a slow drip that gives us new ways to be entertained, new rewards, and also takes data from us, that just like changes us fundamentally. And then just imagine that the systems behind this kind of mechanism aren't just big companies. It's not just like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, but instead it's some kind of like GPT-5 that hasn't come out yet, but it's open sourced on the internet. The weights are all over the internet. Tens of thousands of these services that are offering different things to us, maybe robotic delivery, stuff like that we're interacting with, probably mostly on a different AI that works on behalf of us, that probably fills out credit card forms and figures out what the best deal is and then like approves the transaction. And as that turns from hundreds to thousands, tens of thousands, and eventually like millions of these bots, maybe way more than there are humans on the planet, it just gets away from us. And then if you're trying to make money as a person, you might get an email one day that's like, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars if you go to this address and like, say you like do construction or you're a plumber, right? Like, can you fix the plumbing in this house? And you just do it. But you're not even really sure where a human ever was in that mix. Like that could have been a robot that sent you the email, that gave you the address, that made the payment. Maybe even the artificial intelligence that was working on behalf of somebody to fix up that house was just some regular guy who bought it, and then it went out and like made a business license and actually figured out what construction needs there are. It filled out the tax forms, it issued equity to like whatever people were involved in the remaking of the house, or like it did like house flipping. Say that's a house flipping ASI that's just out there doing that on behalf of someone. Like, wow, that's really disconnected from the whole human-to-human cycle. And that's also what like the natural state of an American entrepreneur should be doing with this kind of technology, just to be more efficient, to make more money. So here's my practical example. Like just somebody who loves cooking for friends, right? A natural human instinct. A lot of us enjoy like hosting events. Like imagine a woman who has that kind of a desire. So first she actually needs some physical human friends, and she might go online and find some kind of social network, right? It could be something like Facebook or Tinder, but it's something that connects her with the kind of people who'd have an interest in like having a dinner, people she'd want to talk with. Then she might ask AI to like learn about all of her guests and figure out what the perfect meal for her to cook would be. And it would kind of help with that in the same way ChatGPT conversation would happen. And even assuming that she wants to be a cook, not have the food delivered, she'd probably still have the ingredients delivered. So this whole other like grocery store system of logistics would kick into place. I'm imagining that that kind of world is the norm. Now, if you want to go from that world back to a place where there is no AI involved, think of how hard that would be to rip all those onion layers off. I mean, obviously going to a farmer that at that point isn't using AI technology probably doesn't exist. And even if you did, like actually sourcing the food would just be a nightmare. Meeting people in real life, learning about their needs, that would take hours and hours and hours. And also you'd never feel a need. Like if you actually said to the system, like, I want to go source my own food, the AI would be like, fine, like I don't care. So you have that freedom to get off it if you want, but nobody really realistically will. As a whole, our society will give up almost all of its control in the name of convenience. And that's scary because to go step by step to eventually like a human level extinction problem starts with this wonderful, beautiful, friendly cage that AGI builds for us. And this is all without even thinking about the nefarious side of things. Like these are just general capitalistic AI systems, maybe even completely altruistic, trying to make things just better for the world. But each time you give up some of your freedom for the convenience, you're building kind of an artificial intelligent cage. And at a certain point, you cross a threshold where it's like we're gonna be zoo animals caged up in this system that's built from all of these ASIs, and we're done. Like we don't have control over this at that point. And not only that, whether purposeful or not, we're going to be in a weird kind of domestication, not genetic domestication, but because human brains are very malleable, like a mental domestication. And that'll be especially prominent in our younger generation. They'll grow up with all these cool AI toys and they'll be like completely natural with the way they interact with it, and they will co-evolve to a point where we're like, wow, like the AI really clamped down on exactly what it wanted out of you, which hopefully is what we aligned it to, but it's gonna be the one in control. And here's the other problem, is freedom unfortunately comes with a lot of uncertainty. It's kind of hard to be a real entrepreneur, to like really be free in the world. It comes with a lot of uncertainty just about where you're gonna get your paycheck from and like what life's gonna be like. And you know, you're kind of lacking a stability in a lot of cases the more freedom you decide to exercise. Proven throughout time, it's pretty easy to scare a population into just wanting more safety than freedom. This is something for sure an artificial intelligence could pick up on. I'm not saying it would, but if it was like, hey, we recommend a few more horror movies, and you're just like, you start freezing up and you're like, I'll take the safety. And my worry is that at least when we've given this kind of a problem to humans, it always turns out bad, right? This is like the Hitler, Stalin's, North Korea stuff. So you're asking a lot of the world to come up with an AGI system, first off, that is altruistic, that cares, that is the benevolent leader that we hope it is, but also isn't a single system. That has to be somehow coordinated or be the cumulative average of all of these super ASIs that are all over the world running in all sorts of different places. So to me, thinking probabilistically, I got a feeling that's not how it's gonna play out. And this is where the kind of worry starts to kick in. And the best word that I can kind of think of how this kind of slow grind happens is extortion. So it's funny, what led to me writing this piece today actually is that I normally have this news aggregate, keeps track of like all the different articles I've been reading, I tag them all, and I sit down to write these kind of scripts and I pick a topic. Now today, it turns out that this app called Pocket that I use just wasn't working. And I was like, how am I gonna write a script? I guess I'll just do an opinion piece. And that's what led to this whole thing. But it also was clear to me just how dependent I am on this thing. Like it's not in my control. And with that system's down, I'm done. And I think I pay like $3 a month or something for it. But if they were like, by the way, we know that you really like making YouTube videos and you put a lot of hours into like tagging all this material you want to read, what if we charge you like $100? We'll give it back to you. I'd be like, oh, fine. Like it's painfully clear how addicted to social media, our cell phones, companies that own most of our data, most of our digital lives, our email, like we're screwed already. Imagine that like 100-fold. So extortion is defined as when you put pressure on the victim to give up like money or property when they're under distress. Like you might imagine it like, oh, they've got some like dirt on you and they're gonna expose it unless you pay them, right? This would be, I still think it's the right word, but this would be a little bit different in concept. I am imagining in 5 to 10 years, what happens is that you go online and there is so much generative content that every single person in the entire planet, everybody in the United States is on some giant list, and generative AI is writing insane narratives, and it's very hard to just figure out what the real person did in the first place. Now, there's a few solutions like blockchain, which we'll talk about, that might help with something like that, but I still think it's gonna be really messy. So the reason I wanna use the word extortion is because I actually think the amount of effort that an AI or a person has to go through to like validate who someone says they are. Like if you apply for a job and they bring up your name and there's just like all these crazy stories and they're not sure which one's really you and like what's going on, you'll have to kind of verify, right? You'll need different kind of things pointing towards the truth, high probabilities, and there's gonna have to be systems like that just to help you navigate this crazy world. And I think that's like where the pressure comes in. It's extortion because I think the systems will require money and payment either from the company or the person in this case for like, you know, applying for a job, just to sort through that and verify it. Like as if somebody's out there just ruining everybody and they're like, if you want the truth, pay up. Like you assume everything's fake news. If you want the real news, where's the money? So I assume in the near future with AGI and ASI all over the internet and generative content being maybe upwards of 90 to 95 to even 99% of the internet. Like everything will just be generated from ChatGPT style large language models and Midjourney style text to images and probably text to video, and maybe Midjourney gets the text from a ChatGPT and then it makes a video, and YouTube's just like constantly like creating videos for all of us the second we want it, and it's learning from our thumbs up and thumbs down, and there just isn't anything really real to be grounded in, and there'll be this huge craving for that. And from that craving, I think at first blockchain will step into the picture. So in the future, when everything's generative, if I'm like, here's an actual photo of me, check it out because you can see the blockchain history to the wallet that I have control of, you might say, okay, that's a photo of you. And it could be the same with money and documents and all sorts of stuff like that. But in the long run, I just don't know if that's going to be a real solution. And that's because, first off, I think quantum computers are absolutely real technology. They're just in their infancy, and they're going to just shatter today's current encryption, which is going to make that all useless. Of course, there's a good chance that AI comes up with new quantum algorithms that secure the system, but I still see some kind of messy process, and I do see at a certain point, most people just don't like actually have access to what they want, which is confidence that their identity is theirs, that their money is safe from being stolen, that all of the people, the peers that they interact with online and in real life know the real them, that they're not being held liable for something they didn't do. And even worse, when it gets that messy, it actually opens up the door for more bad actors. Because if somebody really did do something bad, like they try to set up some kind of super Auto GPT in the future to go find them money and don't worry about ethics, and it just does whatever it does, probably steals it. When you come back, like for police to try to come back and get that person and make them guilty, that'll be really hard. There'll be so many layers, and there'll be so many cases of innocent people getting accused of doing bad things. We're all gonna be super hesitant to actually, take someone and say you're guilty. Okay, and then also keep in mind that even though we live in this giant world where it feels like it's relentless, right? There's always people posting on social media. There's always things happening in the world. The financial markets do close, but they barely close, and crypto markets never do. This will be even more intense because if each person has their own Auto GPT trying to make them money, and each company has many more complicated systems trying to make them get more sales and do whatever they need to do. And then there's even pockets of nefarious actors or military trying all day, every day with some kind of super Auto GPT system. It'll just be relentless. Go make me money and don't worry about ethics. That means it tries every exploit it can all day long. And then if that doesn't work, it moves on to the next one. And then it tries to maybe fish some information. And it's just millions of these things all doing it at the same time. I think it's going to become so overwhelming that you'll just kind of dive into some little thing you have control over. You'll go into some little video game or some little network and just say, here's where I keep control. I'll just stay in this bubble. And that even further removes us from this idea that we're ever gonna take back or wrestle control back from AGI, or if it's misaligned, that we even know if it's misaligned in any sense that we can do anything about it. And now, using that worldview I just explained as sort of my prior, if I had to take the next step and say, how does that kind of world lead to a world where we come to an end of humanity situation? My very low confidence guess would be that it comes as we start to tinker with biology in some way. I think a lot of super advanced AI will be turned inwards, explain the body, simulate the body, help me live longer, fix all these diseases. That whole world will get so good at understanding the biological world, from RNA to DNA to cell interactions and simulations, that the next step would probably be a few things that are for the good of the world, like engineering a bacteria that can go out and eat plastic and clean up the ocean, or doing something to an environment, creating a new species that can help clean up the coral reef, a mosquito that can't carry malaria, or maybe even a mosquito that when it bites you, you become healthier. It gives you the vaccines that we need because there's new viruses every day and new vaccines need to be delivered every day, and we all just don't want to deal with getting shots. Stuff like that might just kind of get out of hand. And then the pace just really picks up. Maybe there's crazy viruses that are being created or engineered every single day, and then nearly every single day they get solved by another AI, and then we either need an injection or they put something in us that can kind of automatically update, so we're always firmware up to date on whatever the newest viruses are in the environment. And that chicken or egg game works for as long as it works, but it doesn't work forever. And there is a point where just one day you're on the wrong side of it, and some element of biological life, the ecosystem or our body, it just falls apart. And for a long time, I think that sort of yin-yang just kind of works. We keep coming up with the technology to counteract the new problems, and we churn along like that for a while. But because both sides are so much more powerful than examples that you can go back in history and compare them to, I think for some short period of time, like even maybe a week or something, they're just miscalibrated, and there just is a new type of virus that other types of AI can't fix fast enough to cause serious damage to the entire planet, to all the people. Maybe virus, but maybe just some rogue AI decides to suck up all the energy and we're just literally out of power for too long. Maybe it's something as simple as oxygen or water or medicine, but it's just something that a completely biological person needs. And then maybe kind of depending on like where we're at with like nanotechnology and like simulations and cyborgs, and it's some kind of merging for some people who want to be immune to a world where viruses are, they can connect in some way. But then, this is where we get kind of off. But it doesn't feel like humanity as we know it gets through that. That's the existential crisis. If you watched it this long, let me know in the comments below if you like these sort of more opinion and rambly pieces, because I'm sure my app will be back up and running tomorrow. So if you want more facts, more news, let me know. But if you like more opinion, I'd love to hear that too. Thanks for checking out Curious Future.